Hello, everybody. It's chapter 14 today, but chapter 14 is so short, it's only 2 pages long, that I'll read chapter 15 as well. And we'll start with chapter 14. 11 things you could do in 100 seconds. 1, get out of bed and get dressed. 2, eat breakfast. 3, run from home to the factory. 4, sew the upper of 1 boot. 5, lace 2 pairs of boots. 6, go for a toilet break at the factory. 7, put the insoles in 10 pairs of boots. 8, box 15 pairs of boots. 9, run home from the factory. 10, eat dinner. 11, get undressed and ready for bed. Chapter 15. If I Can Dream. The foreman is wearing his suit. The jacket is too big and it hangs off his shoulders, making him look like a child pretending to be a grown-up. Every few minutes he wipes the sweat from his face with a stained handkerchief. He paces along the rows, his eyes constantly searching for someone to pounce on, barking at anyone who so much as glances up from their work. Usually, inspectors are late, or they don't show up at all. Once the foreman wore his suit for 2 weeks before giving up hope of her visit. But today, for some reason, the inspector is early. There is a loud banging on the corrugated door, and the foreman glares at us one final time before opening it. Usually, the foreman rushes out to meet the inspector as though they are his favorite person. He shakes their hand and bows and ushers them into the factory. But today, for some reason, he stands speechless in the doorway. It is only when he moves aside, stumbling over his own shoes, that we see why. Instead of a single person, a group of men, 10 of them, enter the factory and line up along the wall. I can tell they aren't inspectors because they are Indonesian rather than white, and they are wearing army uniforms instead of suits. After the last soldier has entered, a man with a moustache and a beret closes the door and shouts an order at them. He must be the commanding officer. 8 of the soldiers turn at the same time and march round the edge of the factory, their rifles balanced against their shoulders. 2 of them wait by the door, holding their guns across their chests. So many workers have stopped to watch that I can hear the stomp of the soldiers' boots on the concrete floor. They march all the way round the room and up the stairway that leads to the foreman's office. The officer strolls behind them and beckons for the foreman to follow him. When they come to a stop on the walkway and stamp their feet, the foreman scurries alongside and unlocks the door. After surveying the factory, the officer takes 3 soldiers into the room, leaving the other 5 on the walkway. Everyone looks up at the stern soldiers, wondering what will happen next. Slowly, we all return to our work. After several minutes of waiting, the office door opens and one of the soldiers strides onto the balcony with a piece of paper. Everyone stops working and the soldier calls out a name. The factory falls completely silent. No humming machines, no rustling paper, no barked orders. Then a chair scrapes and someone at the far end of the factory walks across the floor and up the stairs towards the soldiers. She looks terrified. Just before she reaches the office, the foreman comes out and shouts, "Keep working!" Everyone busies themselves with their tasks, but I can tell no one is really concentrating. The foreman follows the petrified woman into the office, closing the door behind him. Gradually, the sewing machine needles come to a stop as we all watch the walkway. The soldiers fiddle with their rifles and make jokes that I can't hear. One of them takes aim and pretends to spray bullets over the balcony. The other soldiers laugh. After less than a minute, the office door opens and the woman walks quickly back to her station. There is a surge of noise from the sewing machines as everyone pretends to work again. The soldiers straighten up and look serious as their comrade calls another name. This time, a tiny old woman who looks like she spent her entire life hunched over a sewing machine stands and shuffles to the office. The door has only just closed behind her when the sounds of an argument inside the room silence the sewing machines. The voices get louder, all speaking at once. Then there is a shriek and a thud. A moment later, the office door opens and two soldiers emerge, supporting the old woman between them. Her mouth is covered in blood, and her head lolls from side to side. As the soldiers carry her downstairs, her shins drag against the steps. She groans faintly. One of the workers by the cutting machine, a big man named Khalim, steps forward to intervene. The soldiers on the walkway raise their rifles and threaten to shoot him. "Then why don't you kill me, you cowards?" he shouts, holding out his arms. A murmur spreads through the factory. Someone else demands to know what's going on. And it's not until the officer appears on the balcony holding his pistol in the air that order is restored. Someone drags Khalim back before he can cause any more trouble. When the soldiers with the old lady reach the exit, they open the door and dump her onto the street outside. They close the door and return to the office upstairs. We are told to carry on working. Then the same thing happens all over again. A name is called, someone shuffles up the staircase, a minute later the person reappears, another name is called, and every time it feels as though someone is about to twist a knife inside. Only one other person ends up being dumped on the street. Khalim. It takes 4 soldiers to subdue him, and he thrashes around as they half carry, half drag him across the factory. And all the while, one of them jabs at him with the butt of a rifle. The process must happen about 20 times before they call another name that I recognize. My name. I look at Roshi, and he looks at me like it's his name that's being called. "Hurry up," the soldier shouts. I walk to the staircase and stumble up the steps. I can feel everyone watching me. I feel sick. This is what the walk from the halfway line must be like in a penalty shootout. As I pass the line of soldiers, one of them pulls a face at me. I look down at my feet. I turn into the office and hear the door close behind me. This is the first time I've been inside the foreman's office. Now I can see why he's always prowling around the factory floor. I wouldn't want to spend much time in here either. There's a dead plant in one corner, an overflowing bin in the other, and a desk in the center of the room. The foreman sits behind the desk with a strange expression on his face. 3 soldiers stand against the back wall, and the officer waits beside the desk, a fat cigar sticking out from beneath his moustache. The foreman points a hand at the seat opposite him. There are a few spots of blood beneath it. "Please take a seat, Budi." He's never been polite to me before. I sit down. "All we need you to do is put your name on this form." The foreman's eye twitches as a bead of sweat rolls down one side of his nose. His face glistens under the electric strip light. Grandma would say he's sweating like Elvis, because apparently Elvis used to get really hot when he was singing on stage. She showed me a magazine clipping once. I never knew someone so sweaty could be so popular. I look down at the form on the desk. "Well, what does it say?" The foreman's expression changes. His lips uncurl slightly and his eyebrows bunch together. "Budi, just sign the form and you can go back to work." I hesitate because I don't have a signature. I've never had to sign anything before. On the foreman's desk, there is a picture of a woman and 2 children that catches my attention. It looks like they're at a zoo. There's something in a cage behind them, but as I lean closer, a hand slams down onto the desk, knocking it over. The hand doesn't move, and I look along the uniformed sleeve to the round, moustached face leaning over me. The officer takes the cigar out of his mouth and blows a cloud of smoke into my face. "Trust me," he says quietly. "You want to sign that form." I cough once. The foreman turns to the officer and puts his hand up. "He'll sign the form, it's okay." Then he turns to me. Sign the form, Boody. All it says is that you don't want the pay rise. But I do want the pay rise. I'm going to use the money to visit Spain and watch Real Madrid play at the Bernabeu. The officer holds his cigar between two fingers and turns to the soldiers at the back of the room. He smiles, and they all start laughing. They laugh quietly at first, a bit at a time, but then they can't control themselves. The foreman laughs too, but I can tell he doesn't think it's that funny. I don't get the joke either. And when they eventually stop, the officer wipes his eyes with a knuckle. "Ha, you're a funny kid," he said. "That's the best." The foreman leans across the desk and picks up the pen. "Boody, just sign the form, please." And that's when I realize the foreman doesn't want me to sign the form. He needs me to sign the form. I see for the first time how above the foreman is another foreman with a rotan that swishes and stings just as much as his own. I look at the fallen photo frame on the desk and begin to see how he is just doing what he has to do, surviving like everyone else. The foreman obeys the soldiers obey the officer obeys the general, and beneath them all, obeying them all, is me. "Please," the foreman says, "just do it." I'm about to tell him that I don't have a signature when I finally get the joke. The calculator was right, and then I feel it. The first trickle of blood seeping out of a new cut somewhere deep in my chest. And I already know it will bleed forever. That it will drip just enough to never stop, but never enough to kill me. I take the pen and imagine that all these soldiers are here to protect me from crazy fans, and that the form is a contract to play for Real Madrid for 360,000 euros a week. Slowly, carefully, I copy Kieran Wakefield's autograph onto the paper. The soldiers start laughing again as I leave the office, but I just ignore them. People with guns can get away with laughing at pretty much anybody. When I get back to my station, Roshi asks me about what happened, and I tell him that we aren't getting the pay rise. He nods and carries on with his stitching. I ask him whether he thinks I could make it as a professional footballer. "Maybe," he says. "It's hard to tell." When I get home, Mum and Dad are arguing. Dad sits with his back to me, gesturing at something on the table I can't see. Mum stands with her hands on her hips, shaking her head. It looks as though she's been crying. Grandma is slumped in her armchair, staring at the threadbare rug. She doesn't seem to notice me, even though I'm right in front of her. "I don't know, Elvis," Mum shouts. "I don't know what any of this means for us." It's bad news, that's for sure. They'll come here, you know that. "Don't say that," Mum says, turning away. "But it's true. Isn't there something we can do? What if we went to the Dragon?" "No," Grandma says. "No." So quietly that it's somehow more shocking than all the shouting. She is still staring at the floor, as though hypnotized by the pattern on the rug. We don't go anywhere. If they must come here, let them come. Mum and Dad turn to look at her. Their eyes widen when they see me waiting by the door. Dad rushes to conceal whatever is on the table, and Mum wipes her eyes and forces a smile. "Boody," she says, "how long have you been standing there?" "What's going on?" I ask, ignoring her question. "Nothing," Dad says, looking over his shoulder. "Why don't you go outside and play for a while? We're just having a grown-up conversation." I hate it when I'm left out for being a kid. If only they knew about the grown-up conversation I've already had today. I clench my fists against the swelling anger in my chest and resist the urge to tell them what happened at the factory. "It's not playing," I say through gritted teeth. "It's training." "We don't have time for this," Dad shouts, slamming his hand onto the table and turning to face me. As he stands, I get a glimpse of what he was blocking from my view. It's a folded newspaper, although I can't see why he wanted to hide it. I just wanted to know what's going on, I shout back. Don't talk back to me like that, he says. This is a family matter. It's none of your business. Now do as I say. My mouth falls open. How can a family matter be none of my business? I can tell Dad already regrets saying it, but rather than listen to his apology, I storm out of the apartment and run through the maze of side streets, turning this way and that so no one will be able to find me. My head feels thick with rage and tears, and I have no idea where I'm going. All I know is that I want to get away. The anger keeps my legs moving. But no matter how far I run, I can still hear Dad's words just as clearly as when they were first spoken. I reach a part of the city where the crowded back streets become wider, and the buildings on either side grow taller. The windows have glass in them. The walls are newly painted. An electric light illuminates every room. And up ahead, the skyscrapers of the rich district glow against the darkening sky. I must have run a long way. At the end of the street, the buildings give way to a large floodlit rectangle. And then I realize where my feet are taking me. The football academy. As I get closer, I hear echoed shouting. Someone claps encouragement, and the crisp thud of a football being thumped is met with cheers. I hook my fingers onto the wire fence surrounding the pitch and rest my head against the mesh. Beneath the floodlights, the pitch looks thick and luscious and flat and slick. I wonder how it stays so wet when it hasn't rained in months. The ball, shiny from the moisture of the pitch, glides from one pair of boots to another. The boots shine too, and I recognize the fluorescent yellows and lime greens and bright oranges from the factory. I wonder what it would be like to play football on grass. The players must be about Roshi's age, 14 or 15. But they are as big as men and just as strong. One of the wingers makes a run on the far side of the pitch, and a midfielder chases him down. I hear the winger hit the ground from where I'm standing and half expect him to roll around, clutching his ankle. But within a second, he's up and chasing after the ball. On the touchline, a man with a whistle around his neck scribbles on a notepad. He must have taken a bribe because everything from his boots to his tracksuit to his baseball cap is covered in the same logo. On the pitch, the player, who is much smaller than everyone else, races towards a line of defenders. He keeps the football close to his feet and twists and turns past tackle after tackle. As he surges into the box, the goalkeeper rushes to close him down. One of the attacker's teammates urges him to square the ball for an open goal, but the small player shoots instead, and the keeper punches the shot away. "Hey, kid," a voice says, "what are you doing?" I look along the fence and watch as an old man makes his way towards me. His overalls are dirty, and he carries a sack in one hand and a tube in the other. Every few paces, he shakes the tube and sprinkles something on the ground. To my surprise, he has a pair of brand new football boots on his feet. Real ones, but he looks far too old to play. "I asked you a question," he says, stopping a few paces from me. "I'm just watching the match," I say. The man frowns at me, but soon turns to look at the pitch. The small player is on the ball again, trying to dribble out of his own penalty area. "He'll be a star one day," the man says, nodding in the direction of the boy as he skips over an outstretched leg. "One of the greats. Victor, he's called. Remember the name." I shake my head. "He'll never be great if he doesn't learn to pass the ball." The man raises his eyebrows. "So you're an expert on the beautiful game, are you?" I shrug. "You don't have to be an expert. Football is a team game. It helps if you're a team player." Victor is muscled off the ball by two big defenders and tumbles to the floor. He rolls over, holding his shoulder, but when he realizes no one is paying attention, he gets up and wanders back to the halfway line. "Anyway, what are you doing here?" I ask, "and where did you get those boots?" The man laughs. "I'm the groundskeeper," he says. "And I got these boots from my employer. I need to wear them to protect the pitch. That's why I've got these as well." He holds up the sack and the tube. "Lots of vermin like the look of my beautiful grass. Rats want to burrow and make their nests. Cats want to dig holes and barack everywhere. That's why I'm putting poison around the perimeter." "And the sack?" He taps the bulge at the bottom of the sack. "I'll let you work that one out for yourself." Over on the pitch, Victor is rolling around again. This time it's his shin. "How do you get the grass to look like that?" I ask. "Water," he says. "Lots of water and plenty of patience." Looks good, doesn't it? I nod. "I bet it's even better to play on." The groundskeeper smiles. "Do you reckon you're good enough to take on these guys?" "I don't know." I squeeze the wire fence beneath my fingers. "But it doesn't matter. I'd never be able to afford it." "It doesn't cost anything if you're good enough. Some of these kids come from the slums. They get sponsored to train here." "But my family needs me to work. My grandmother needs a lot of medicine." The groundskeeper yawns. "Listen, kid, I worked here a long time. I've seen hundreds of boys come through the academy. Some of them went on to be professionals. Some of them didn't. But the ones that made it had one thing in common." He pauses, and I can tell he wants me to make a guess. "They were already talented?" "No. They had the right attitude." "What you said about Victor might be true," he says, looking over at the boy who is still rolling around. "He's good enough to make it, but if he doesn't acquire the right attitude, he's got no chance." "But my family," I say. "If I just had enough money to train here until someone sponsored me—" "Kid, I've heard it all before. Sure, your family needs you to earn, but there will always be something in the way. You know, I've been putting poison down for years, and do you know how many rats' nests I've found beneath the pitch? Or how many cat droppings I've picked up from the grass? 0. They all fall at the first obstacle, and they all end up in the sack. I used to wonder why the rats don't start their burrows outside the perimeter, or why cats don't leap over the ring of poison. It's because they can see what they want, but they can't see past what's stopping them. There will always be something or someone stopping you from realizing your potential. Always a groundskeeper tending the fence, always a goalkeeper guarding the goal. You've just got to see beyond him." The groundskeeper sighs and swings the sack over his shoulder. He sprinkles some pellets on the grass between us. "The problem with being a dreamer is that occasionally you will have nightmares. You just got to make sure they don't ever spook you enough to want to wake up. Now," he said, "get out of here," he said, smiling, "before you end up in the sack." I start walking home, and soon the roads begin to narrow and crumbling buildings crowd around on either side. Dim street fires replace the bright lights of the academy, and even though the air is bitter with the smell of burning rubbish, it feels good to draw deep breaths into my lungs. A few streets from my apartment, I notice a boy curled up in a doorway, sucking his thumb. I'm about to walk past when something catches my eye and makes me stop. The boy is sleeping on a mat of newspaper pages, and just below his outstretched hand there is a picture of a person that I recognize. It's Dad, but not as I've ever seen him before. He looks mean, and his eyes stare out from the front page like two black, empty holes. A faint breeze rustles the sheets and brings the face to life, making me shiver. The boy stirs among the flapping pages, and I break into a run. I don't look back. My heart jumps into my throat when I round the corner and almost crash into Dad. "Woody, there you are!" He draws me into a strong hug. "I'm sorry, son." I lost my temper and said some things I didn't mean. He releases me and looks into my face. Where have you been, Budi? You look pale. Are you okay? In the darkness, his eyes have that black, empty look about them. I manage to nod. I'm fine, just tired. Come on, let's get you home. Mum and Grandma are both relieved to see me, and I let them hug me before taking myself off to bed. I collapse onto my mattress and try to make sense of everything. Why would Dad be in the newspaper? They only put your picture in the paper if you've done something really good. Or something really bad. And if he's done something good, why would they use a picture that makes him look so bad? Then I remember all the overtime he's done recently. And I wonder whether he really has been working late, or whether he was doing something else instead, something illegal. I know lots of people do bad things to earn extra money, but I never thought Dad might be one of them. I close my eyes, I fall asleep, I dream, and I wake up to the nightmare.